Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, robots and aliens, and people of all ages. We're not discriminative here at Cocktail Hour, although we do make a distinction on when it is that we correctly start the show. And by we, I mean simply me, as in Weebo, because my co-host obviously does not have the same level of what is it called? Not tardiness, the opposite of tardiness. Punctuality. There we go. He does not have the same level of punctuality that your girl Weebo does have, which is fine. Not everyone does have this, but take your bets in the chat for right now. We'll see how long it takes for Polly to show up this evening. Hopefully, he will definitely show up because I desperately want to know his thoughts on Pride and Prejudice 2005. I really, really want to know what he thinks about it. I have been super excited about this for the last 2 weeks. So hopefully it'll be a good show once that occurs. Although it'll be a good show regardless. This is the biggest point of the week that I was super excited for. Although we'll probably talk about other things that are super interesting. Did he watch it? That is the age-old question. Did Polly watch Pride and Prejudice? I guess we'll find out when he shows his face, or doesn't show his face, or shows his otter, whatever. Shows his otter. Doesn't that sound like it could be a euphemism? It does sound like it could be a euphemism, doesn't it? Anyway, so who do we have in the chat? We have Faz04, we have Zombie Teddy, Chaos, Eve, oh my gosh, Lion Patriot, Ryan Walters, more Zombie Teddy, Tiberius Kirk. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cocktail Hour. And this evening, I am drinking a Riesling. No, a Moscato. I'm sorry. I thought it was a Riesling because I had dessert with it earlier. I did open this bottle up before the show actually started because I desperately needed a drink after the 6-hour drive that I had today. If you guys are unaware, I go to college several hours away from where it is that I actually live. And so during breaks, I go home. And that drive home is quite a distance, unfortunately. But I do make it without complaint. The only issue is this time there were several accidents on my way home, unfortunately. And as a result, the progress was slow moving. And so I desperately needed some liquid help, some liquid love, if you will, to assist the recovery that was that agonizingly long trip. How is the kitty? I have not seen the kitty this evening thus far, but I've only been home for about 2 hours, and an hour and a half of that was spent unpacking, going to the bathroom, and doing some cleanliness. I've only had one glass. I'm not supposed to be this light of weight. I thought college was supposed to be a home. Ryan. Only for those people who think of it as a home, I guess. A home away from home. I don't know. This is just the stepping stone until I get into real life. And right now I'm in that weird, awkward position of my life where it's kind of limbo. So everything's a little bit just frazzle-dazzle, which is a scientific term for nothing super certain, nothing super serial, nothing really counts. It's all just kind of hand wavy. And then once I get out of college, once I graduate, I get a job, then real life starts to happen. And we take things a little bit more seriously. Hopefully. Worried for Kitty, yes, you should be. I came home to the kitchen being a little bit of a mess. It smells a little bit weird, I'm not gonna lie. There was garbage on the floor of the kitchen, and the countertop is riddled with dishes. There is an open bag of shrimp that has been there for I do not know how long. And yeah. There's your kitchen update, Daniel Fullman. I'm gonna leave it until tomorrow because that's when the chores roll over again, remember? We have the rolling over list of chores, and this will be the 2 weeks hence since we established that, and now we have 2 more weeks left of school, including finals week. So hopefully it gets a little bit better. Maybe it's just me freaking out because it's the back end of the cleaning week, but we shall see. Hello, Brad Young. Evening, all evening. Weebo, hope you ate a ton this week. I did actually, and oh boy, it was. You know, I've iterated to the chat in the last couple of months that I have been attempting to lose some of the weight that I put on when I went to school, mostly in the boobage area because that's where it all happened. And this was not good for my weight loss routine, but I didn't expect it to be, which is why, you know, I'm not guilting myself into sadness over this. Honestly, it's not a super big deal. It's like a minor setback. I do know that once I do go home for winter break, I'm going to have to be very good about what I ingest. And I think I will be able to. But that should be fine. Freshman 15? Yeah, I guess you could say freshman 15. Although it came on more for junior year than it did ever in my freshman year. It was a lot thinner in the freshman year than I was when I was a junior. Junior year is when it really started to take off. And I think it had to do with stress. And at that point I was making my own home cooked meals, so maybe I was overcompensating. Because here's the thing, here's my working theory about food, right? And it's not a good theory, I'm aware, but I am of the opinion that any food that you make, you happen to be the god of, the creator of, if you will, and as a result, any food that you make does not count because it's effort out, effort in, right? No, I'm aware. The boys just like to make a lot of pasta last year, and so me being a woman, carbo loading, you know, and not doing cardio to counteract all that nonsense definitely took its toll. So we will endure, and we will attempt to counterbalance that nonsense. Professor Platypus says it's Sunday evening and he's bored. Well, let's hope I can entertain the masses until my co-host gets here. You know what they say about women. We're not that super funny, which is fine. Not all of my jokes land. So, I am drinking a Moscato. It tastes super sweet. It's actually really good. Bela came back today, and his mother had gotten him an advent calendar of wine bottles. So we're going to be putting a dent in that for the next couple of weeks. He did not like the very first one. It was a sparkling rose from Spain. I'm online.
You're online.
Yes, I'm streaming. Speak of the devil, and he shall hear his name and come a knocking. Apparently. I'm online. What? Really? You? Of all people? Yes. Pasta is the devil's pasta. So what's not the devil's pasta? Advent calendar of wine bottles. Where the hell was that when I was drinking? That's a good question. I actually don't know where she got it, but I'd really like to know where she got it, because have we met, chat? I am a wino, a chronic wino. More often than not, you will see me drinking wine on this stream. Oh, let me tell you about what I attempted to do over break. I attempted to figure out how to make hot chocolate. The only thing was, it was alcoholic hot chocolate, by the way. The only thing was, I did not have the milk that I wanted for the hot chocolate. So instead, I used the eggnog that we had in the house, all of it. So I had it sitting on the stove, boiling on the stove, and I poured the Nestle hot cocoa mix or whatever in, because that's all we had. And then after it gets nice and warmed up on the stove, I poured in some Kahlua. And it was really good, actually. I'm not going to lie. It was super delicious, very strong. But because I had like 4 glasses of eggnog and then 4 shots of Kahlua and then like 4 big, huge tablespoons of hot chocolate, and I'm just like mixing and stirring and stirring and stirring, whatever. So I finally got it to a point where it was hot enough and it was, you know, mixed enough that it wasn't going to be a nightmare. So I drank it. It tastes good. It's fantastic. And then someone gave me the bright idea to leave it. To leave it for dessert, because it's more of a dessert drink. It honestly was. I mean, come on. Eggnog, hot chocolate, and Kahlua. What are you going to do with that during dinner? That's going to get you on your ass faster than, say, 3 Coors Lights is ever going to. Especially in the time frame that you can drink it in. Because you can sip a Coors for half an hour, depending how thirsty you are. But this, you just kind of let go, and it'd be gone, and it would knock you on your ass in the process. Little did I know, the eggnog started thickening more so than it usually is thickened, which is bad. And so we just ended up turning it off because we're thinking, it's getting too warm, so it'll start to burn at the bottom. So we turn it off, leave it to sit for a little bit. Come back. It's still warm, right? But it's turned into this gelatinous, just blob. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh no, I ruined all of this because I had. It should have been something that had been, made, drank, and then that's it. Not made in advance, left to sit, just my mistake. I should have known with eggnog, you can't just leave it to sit. Things are going to happen. Stuff is going to transpire. The thing will thicken. I don't like that word. Thicken. Yeah, it turned into flubber, essentially. Speaking of flubber, did you guys know that I have a Discord? It's called the Flubber Initiative. It's linked in the description down below. You can join it. Make sure that you read the instructions/rules so that you know how to verify. It's super fun. That's where we hang out all the time and sometimes do game nights. Although I have been kind of slacking in that department because I've been busy with Thanksgiving and thesis stuff. Like the week before Thanksgiving week, I had my thesis presentation. And now the week after Thanksgiving break, I will have another thesis presentation. Not that one that I have to give, but I have to be in attendance for other people's Thanksgiving. I get distracted because one of you guys, you lovely, awesome people, join the Discord. I gotta do not disturb my phone. But I was talking about thesis presentations. I have to be in attendance of the thesis presentations. Otherwise, my grade tanks, obviously. It happens. Please demonstrate your stirring method again. Like this. Okay. Yeah, essentially what happened, Ryan Walters, was that it emulsified, I guess you could say. Because everything just kind of bound together, I guess. It was bad. It was not appetizing in the slightest. But that's what I get for experimenting the night of a party. It'd be like that sometimes. So did you get this trench coat that you wanted, asked Daniel Pullman? I did, actually. I have it. It's hanging up in the closet. I've had it for a while now. I've been using it in real life, actually, as well, just to kind of get myself acclimated to how it is that I like to wear it. And I do like to wear it. I look very nice in it. Balix said I look like a mob boss in it, which I think is a compliment, but who knows? Excuse me. I'm so sorry. Could have been worse. It could have given you diarrhea. Well, we'll see. It happened last night. It wasn't actually a Thanksgiving Day drink that I tried to make. It was the day after, 2 days after Thanksgiving. What else? What else happened this week that I could talk about? Oh, yes. You know I have a cat, right? Not the one that's here, the one that lives at the school, but the one that I have that lives at home with me, that I've had since I was a wee child. Well, his birthday was just recently, and he turned 15. Can you believe it? I can't. Such an adorable little child, an adorable little thing. Let me see if I can find a picture of it, maybe. He's the sweetest of hearts. Do I have my phone linked to this? It's checking. It needs permission to connect and access data on my phone. Please check my phone for notifications and tap allow. I can do that. It's not showing up, so I guess I'll have to wait. I'll wait until you're distracted by the good looks of Polydub. He is a little bit old. He's not super fat. He's thick-furred, which sounds like a ridiculous excuse for why it is that my cat can't fit through a doorway, but he's genuinely like a thick cat. We shave him every year around summertime. You know what? I'll send these to, I'll send them to my email. How about that? I'll send some pictures to my email, and then I can display them to you lovely people. So he's a very thick-furred cat. Reason being is because he's a domestic long-haired, which means that he's got very thick fur. Duh. But in addition to that, I guess, like, if we were to shave him, and we have, so we know that he's not super thick boy. Images. Camera. I gotta find him first. Oh, boy. And here are the kitchen pictures. Here are more kitchen pictures. Oh, my gosh. Why do I have so many pictures of a kitchen? This is so sad. There's the rat that I was training to do lever things with. Where is Cole? Gotta find a summer picture of him. And then let me find a regular picture of him so that you can kind of see what he looks like. Because we shave him. Okay, so at the onset of summer, we shave the cat every single year. Reason being is because he is such a thick boy, that if we didn't shave him, it would be a problem for him in the summer since he is indoor-outdoor. And because he's indoor-outdoor, we desperately need to shave him. Because otherwise he'd overheat and he'd die. It's not fun. What else do I have? Restored pictures, Instagram. I think I posted pictures on Instagram, actually, of him before. Oh, my God. I have so many pictures. Oh, this is way too far back. Let's show you the thick boy pictures first. I'll send it to myself. How about that? I'll send you thick boy pictures, and then the thinny boy pictures. The thinny boy pictures. Did that just come out of my face? It did come out of my face. Okay. Here we go. Share the screen. This is Cole, the most adorable of cats on this face of the planet. This is midway through him regrowing his coat. And this is him at the height of his fur coat, staring at himself. Because he's, obviously the greatest cat of all. Anyway, thank you, Jacob, for the $5 over on. Actually, you know what? Hang on. I gotta do the thing. I gotta do the thing. Thank you, Jacob, for the $5 over on the super chats. Balak is most definitely gay. Can confirm. Well, of course, if anyone were to be able to confirm that, it would absolutely be Jacob. Jacob, tell Balak I said hi while you guys are gaming at the moment. I'm not ignorant. Anyway, so yeah, that's Cole at the height of his fluffiness. You keep those boyfriend pics to yourself, thank you. Mustafa. All right, I'm not a cat lady. My cat doesn't even live with me, unfortunately. Putty tat. Yes, it is a putty tat. All great cats are self-centered. Anyway. Oh, I should probably go back to the picture, actually. Screen share. Application window. Where did it go? There it is. Nice. You'll notice in the picture of the cat itself, right? You'll notice. Maybe not so much in that picture, but in that picture, he doesn't have a tail. You see that? He does not have a tail at all. The reason being is because when we first got him, 15 years ago, I'll tell you the story of how we got my cat. How about that? Because it'll have been 15 years ago about this time of year. Thanksgiving, 15 years ago. I was with my mother for Thanksgiving. So was my brother. But my father and my cousins had gone to Wisconsin to celebrate Thanksgiving with that half of the family. And they decided to go out to eat for Thanksgiving instead of staying and cook like a homemade Thanksgiving meal. They went to a restaurant, and this is a restaurant that we frequented before many, many moons. Currently, they're closed for the season, I believe, but they didn't always used to be closed for the season. And at the time, they were serving like a Thanksgiving buffet or something. So my cousins are 7, 5, and 3, give or take. Now, this is the cousin that goes to school with me, and then my 2 other cousins. They had seen this cat around the outside of the restaurant near the doors. And Felix in the chat. I did not like the wine. It was disgusting, like you said. But they'd seen this cat, and they hadn't been letting the cat in or out of in the establishment. They kept kicking it out because he kept trying to get into the establishment for food. And my cousins were just not having any of this. They would not eat their Thanksgiving dinner. They would not sit down at the table. They were too distracted by the cat outside the door. They did not eat Thanksgiving dinner that evening. They sat with that cat, trying to get it to eat in the bed of my dad's van, I believe, maybe, all evening. And this cat was a little bit worse for wear. He'd had like an injury to his face on this side. His tail had been broken. He looked a little bit roughed up, not gonna lie. He's always had that look about him, though. And it was just not, he was not in a good condition. So my dad decided to bring the cat home with him. So my dad had decided to bring the cat home with him and get him fixed up, looked after, and whatnot, checked out by the vet. So he brings the cat home, whole 3 hours from Wisconsin to where it is that we live, and he gets it checked out. They ended up having to amputate the tail because you can't cast a tail for whatever reason. He lost one of his bottom fang teeth, so if you look at him head on and he opens his mouth, you can only see the one jutting up. He, other than that though, he's like a pretty normal, well actually he's a little bit abnormal for a cat, but he doesn't have any behavioral issues. He is completely social. He goes indoors and outdoors, gets into fights with a whole bunch of other neighborhood critters and whatnot, hunts for his own food, goes in the litter box, goes in the backyard. He's a multi-purpose, multifunctional cat, and there doesn't seem to be a lot wrong with him. In actuality, I think he's probably one of the best animals that I've ever had, Daphne aside. He is the perfect cat, maulings aside, because it's not just the only time that he's been mauled. A few years later on, actually, when I was in high school, he'd also gotten attacked by another animal, and his leg had been broken, his tibia dislocated from whatever bone it is that's down there, and there were bite marks in his leg. So we had to rush him to the pet ER, which I didn't know they had until I had to go to one, and I had to hold my cat in my arms for a solid hour and not let him jostle, because his pupils were just blown so freaking wide. And Balak's raging in chat at me right now, but his pupils were blown wide from the pain, and he was just not having a good time of it. My dad was actually worried that he'd go feral, but you know, he was a good cat the whole ride there, the whole hour that it took to get to the pet ER. And so we got him fixed up. We had to put him in a cast. He couldn't go outside. He was miserable. The doctor said that he would never walk normally again, but he's pretty chill. There's not a lot wrong with him. He still climbs trees like a motherfucker, hops up and down off the counters, and chases after birds and other little rodents like it's not a big deal. And so that is my cat. That's why he has no tail, and that's why you don't mess with the cat. And I see Caleb is still raging in the chat about the wine that he gave me that I didn't like. I will interrupt her. Oh boy. So fair warning to all of you, incoming. I just powered through. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. You know who I could invite if Polly doesn't want to show his face because he actually didn't watch the thing, the movie that I told him to watch? I can invite Eve. Eve, you have a link. Just so I'm not alone. I will interrupt her. Please don't interrupt me. You got better things to do. Babe. I was trying to tell a really heartfelt, warming story. But no, Pikachu gotta be all up in my business, distracting me with his nonsense. All right. We're gonna do the thing again. Ready? Okay. Hello. Thank you to BTK for the $2 over on the super chats. Yeah, that's right. Turn your head when you read me. Is this gonna be a thing? It's gonna be a thing, isn't it? You're always going to be alone. I can hear you. You're not sneaky. Yes? Are you just gonna stand there? Why are you flicking me off?
Oh, that was good.
Did you just come in here to drink?
Yep.
God, I'm gonna miss this when we move out. This is our last semester coming up, you know? Like this one, and then the end of this, and then next semester, and then we graduate. For the first time in 3 years, 3.5 years, 4 years, whatever. I will not live in the same building as that boy. Could be worse. He could have farted. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay. Hey, guess what? We have a special guest. It's Eve. She's not on yet. She will be here. I stared her right in the eyes and drank 2 shots of rum. He did. And he flicked me off. But you guys couldn't see that. Oh, the gays and their quirks. Do you hear that? No, said Weebo, no. What else can I talk about? You know, okay, so I had a discussion with my dad. And this stemmed from a discussion that I had on Twitter about, well, it started off with a discussion about the law in Ohio that they're proposing.
Hey, you should talk about my ass. That'd be an interesting topic.
No, it wouldn't. We're talking about a law in Ohio that had to do with, I can actually pull it up and read the exact language of the law, just so you guys have an idea of what it is that I'm talking about. And this was what was supposedly a problem, right? And I have mixed feelings about it, but there was one thing that I actually had a thought about that I thought was an interesting take, and we'll get to that. But first, we have to discuss the law, right? So it was an Ohio law that says a physician who does all of the following is not subject to criminal prosecution, damages in any civil action or professional disciplinary action for a violation of this chapter. A was using reasonable medical judgment, believe that it is highly probable that the pregnant woman will die from a certain fatal condition before her unborn child is viable. Oh, by the way, it has to do with abortion, so we're gonna have that conversation. Can we do a shot together right now? Right now? It's Sunday. I have a paper to write. Perform a surgery before the unborn child is viable for the sole purpose of treating the pregnant woman's fetal condition. And then the third one, which is the one that everyone had like a super big issue with, was take all possible steps to preserve the life of the unborn child while preserving the life of the woman. Such steps include, if applicable, attempting to reimplant an ectopic pregnancy into the woman's uterus. Now, the discussion initially started out because someone was being uber hyperbolic about the purpose of this nonsense, and I'm going to bring Eve in before I go on. Hi, Eve.
Hi.
We're talking about a debate that I had on Twitter.
Oh, yeah?
Saw it.
I have not been on Twitter much the past few days.
It's fine. I'll text you right quick the law so you can get a little bit caught up. But it's not in action right now, but it is being proposed in Ohio. And I had some thoughts about it. I'm not sure where exactly it is I stand, but it started out with me kind of like, chill out, man. You're fear-mongering on this guy who was... Actually, I have the tweet screenshotted for this exact reason, because he blocked me. And I knew he was going to block me, too. He said, and yet another chapter of We Hate Women So Much We Want Them Dead enters into the annals of U.S. history. And he's reacting to the Guardian's take on this bill that says, bill orders doctors to reimplant ectopic pregnancy or face, I think it was like abortion legislation repercussions or something. And that seemed to be, to me, to be a little bit misleading, because it talked about, it seemed to me to breathe this air of malicious intent within the bill proposers.
Mm-hmm.
And the person went on to say, literally a bill written to kill women who won't let others dominate their bodies. And I thought this was a little bit silly, because, like, you read the bill. I read the bill to you guys. It dictates, where the frick is it? Take all possible steps to preserve the life of the unborn child while preserving the life of the woman in the bill.
Like, is this concerning abortion, or just like in the situation of, let's say the woman's life is in danger and the baby has to come out?
This encompasses abortion, but it has specifically to do with the physician's responsibility to treat unborn children.
Mm-hmm.
So, the issue here, right, is currently, as medical science stands, ectopic pregnancies can't be transplanted from the fallopian tubes directly into the uterine wall and implanted there so that they develop naturally as a fetus would. Currently, medical science doesn't support this. And where I was going with this with my dad was, just because it doesn't currently support this ability doesn't mean that it shouldn't also... that laws should be limited to the scope of what is currently known, possible, right? Because otherwise, the Second Amendment itself, this is kind of like a tangent, but otherwise the Second Amendment itself wouldn't cover anything beyond muskets, which we know that it covers things well beyond muskets, or things that were only available during the time of our founding fathers, which I know is not just muskets, obviously, but that argument goes immediately out the window.
Well, this is really, what I'm interpreting a lot of this is just saying it's putting more weight on the child's life than there normally would have been in the situation.
Yeah.
Because normally when you have like a woman who's like, hey, I was in a car accident, I really need the surgery, but it's probably going to kill my baby in the process, they do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They don't wait to figure out if it's going to, if they can try to save, they'll save the baby if they can usually, but if
it's secondary.
Is one or the other, they're going to save the woman's life. And I'm pro-life to begin with, and think that, there's a child inside of the person.
Mm-hmm.
Once the sperm meets the egg, that's it. You're done. That's a living creature. I can understand in those situations why the woman's life still takes priority.
Oh yeah, because the fetus can't gestate anymore if the woman dies.
Exactly.
The baby dies too. So save the woman, and then reprioritize after she's in the clear.
Right. So I'm not sure what this law is trying to do, because I feel like most health providers do the very best they can to save the unborn child before, saying, okay, look, it's either going to be the mother or the child,
Oh, wait. Okay, hang on. Joys of Sorrow was lost. He says, didn't understand the comparison. Isn't it determined by who can actually be saved, either the mom or the baby? Are you talking about the comparison I made to the Second Amendment? Or are you talking about what it is we're talking about with regards to saving the life of the mother? Because in my comparison, founding fathers gave us the right to bear arms, knowing that there would be advancements in firearm, or that there would be improvements, innovation, firearms that are capable of doing a lot more damage than they were at the current present day standards. So medical science would follow in the same logic, whereas, you legislate under the assumption that it will at some point get to a point where this is something possible. Or this is something that is speculatively within the realm of possibility. It's feasible. So you legislate with the understanding that this language covers bases that are currently available, but also anything that might be available down the line. Because you can never have a law that specifically stipulates to each and every individual instance that it will ever occur. Everything has to be super general, which is why laws are speculative to a broader scope than just what is currently known. Does that make more sense, Joyce? One of the problems is that the law is typically 10 years behind the times. If you restrict the law too much, we may have the ability to save children in the not distant future, yet can't legally. That's another thing too, right? So one of the issues that I have with our legal system is that laws are more reactive than they are proactive. They lack an imaginative take in that we don't actually approach things from a perspective of, well,
it seems to be, I don't know what it is about hierarchy in general, both our government, corporations, most of them all seem to react to bad situations to legislate something, pass new laws, regulations, things like that, rather than just saying, hey, this is a bad thing we don't want to happen to begin with. And, unless it's already been a precedent that's set way back, like, for example, hey, beating the shit out of your coworkers is probably a bad idea. That's going to be against the rules. Chaos needs stockings hung with care on that mantle. I'm working on it. I'm putting up my Christmas decorations this week.
I don't have any Christmas decorations. I forgot my Christmas hat.
Aww.
Unless I have it in my hat box, which is entirely possible. But
so you heard her, guys. Everyone send Christmas decorations to Weebo's P.O. box.
Oh no! I only have 14 days left in this joint. What am I going to do with all those Christmas decorations when I'm not here?
Decorate your room.
I'm sorry, the quality isn't super great. It's decent on my end. Eve, is it decent on your end?
Mm-hmm. Like for StreamYard, it looks good, but
excellent. Government is equal to a cat playing with a fly. No, no companies don't really care unless it affects their money, though. And then, good example is the British Kinder Egg ban of '99. There was an egg ban?
Oh yeah, the Kinder Egg ban. Was it the British? Because I thought it was banned over here for a little bit. The Kinder Eggs, the ones that are like chocolate, but they have the toy in the center of them.
Yeah.
Dumbass kids were shoving the whole damn thing in their mouth and choking on the toy.
What the fuck?
So they put a ban in on them. Yeah. It's
That's ridiculous to me.
It's just as silly as it sounds.
Okay, so but back to the Ohio law, right? Is it ridiculous that laws are more preemptive than they are reactive to things? Because the way that my dad explained it to me, he made it sound like it was a ridiculous notion to even consider. But I think there's some merit to it. Like to be a little bit more imaginative in the way that we legislate. Because things are always advancing, and if it's in the realm of feasibleness, you'd want to be proactive in the way that you respond to these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then also on the other side of this too, because I'm not 100% sure how I feel about the government mandating that doctors do this, not yet possible, but assuming that it would be possible at some point, mandating a surgery on a woman to not only, one, remove this egg that would cause her great stress and struggle and perhaps even death if it weren't removed, and then reimplant it into her. Because this wasn't, I don't know how I feel about that necessarily, mandating that necessarily. Although, on the one hand, this law doesn't really stipulate to me like it's an abortion law. More so, it's just kind of to establish the hierarchy of how it is that we should be prioritizing life in a medical sense.
Mm-hmm.
Although it does probably touch on that area, that doesn't seem to me to be the emphasis on this. Like, I'm pretty sure that women who get pregnant, 99% of the time who have ectopic pregnancies, right? They in any other case want that kid. Like, I don't have the statistics on this, but if you're trying for a kid and it just so happens that that kid that you wanted is an ectopic pregnancy, and you have the ability to transplant it into your uterine wall, you would want that, right?
I would think so. I mean, most people who are having a baby want to actually have the baby, so.
Yeah, most people.
Unless, I mean, if they haven't, if they don't, then they're usually going to try to have an abortion anyway. So,
but to make that argument that, well, why would we want the government to be able to legislate into your uterus in that way, ordering an extra medical procedure on top of this other one that you just had to save your life? Why would we want to allow the government to do that? Seems to me like you're coming at this from the perspective that the woman is always wanting to abort that child, whereas I'm coming from the perspective that abortions are not the majority of outcomes when it is that you conceive a child, especially in these instances. Right?
Right. I was apparently incorrect. Joyce says that it never actually was any kid that choked on it, but they were afraid a child would choke on it, and so they banned them. It's even worse. They did it preemptively.
Yeah. Well, like, I'm not talking about Kinder Egg surprises getting caught in some poor kid's throat necessarily when I'm talking about preemptive legislation. I'm more so talking about, like, in the event that, I don't know, autonomous vehicles become a thing, right? And a company legislates without telling its, and not a company legislates, a company programs its vehicles to run over a whole bunch of people rather than sacrifice the life of its driver, or vice versa. And the government legislates in such a way after the fact that would have prevented a whole host of just sad outcomes, as opposed to beforehand, where it could have prevented a whole bunch of sad outcomes. Actually, you know what? This is a bad example because no one wins in this situation. Like, how do you legislate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, I got to come up with a better example. Okay, all right. Oh shit, forced sterilization was a thing in the US in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Actually, there were doctors out there that, like, sterilized people without their consent, without their knowledge even, just to kind of prevent that nonsense, you know, of pregnancy in certain people.
I don't think they are banned in the US anymore, Happy Dude, because I think they were at one point, but somebody said this is dumb and took that away. They definitely banned them in the UK temporarily.
I'm going to read this article. The Supreme Court ruling that led to 70,000 forced sterilizations. This is a 37-minute read. What? How does the Supreme Court ruling lead to this? All right, hang on. I'm going to switch it to the thingy. Boy, oh boy. Where is Polly? Is he okay? Do we know? This is super.
I messaged him on Discord, but that'll do about as good as screaming into the wind to see if he's there.
Yeah. I hope he's not gotten into a car accident rushing to get to me.
I would be very surprised if that was the case.
Yeah, me too. The Supreme Court ruling that led to 70,000 forced sterilizations. All right, let's see what this article has to say.
It's imbeciles, the Supreme Court.
In 1927, the U.S. Supreme Court decided by a vote of 8-1 to uphold the state's right to forcibly sterilize a person considered unfit to procreate. The case, known as Buck v. Bell, centered on a young woman named Carrie Buck, whom the state of Virginia had deemed to be feeble-minded. Considered a victory for America's eugenics movement, an early 20th century school of thought that emphasized biological determinism and actively sought to breed out traits that were considered undesirable. There were kinds of categories of people who were deemed to be unfit. The eugenics looked at evolution and survival of the fittest as Darwin was describing it, and they believed we can help nature along if we just plan, we reproduce. Who reproduces and who doesn't reproduce? Can we just I don't like it when people decide that it is within the planet's best interest for them to decide who plays God and who doesn't. No. Like, this is why I refuse to give my genetics to my genetics. This is why I refuse to give my cheek swab to like a 23andMe. This is why I refuse to genetically modify my child in utero, because apparently that's a thing that can happen at some point. So many things. That's why I think that there is a certain arrogance with people who are super green and eco-friendly. Like, bruh. You are going to save the planet just by making a small little decision on a massive scale for everyone? You think that that's going to make the world of difference necessarily? Right?
I would say most of these kind of endeavors start out in a good place of wanting to say, hey, people who have, hereditary diseases shouldn't pass them on and stuff like that. But that is a dangerous road to go down.
It's a dangerous precedent to set, but also I feel like people should make those decisions for themselves. Like, naturally, ideally, those would get weeded out by the people making responsible reproductive decisions, right? So a person can choose not to have a kid, just like another person can choose not to have a kid with that person. But like sperm banks, that's subverting that nonsense. You are essentially subverting the natural order of things, which is, settle down, find a mate, breed with that person, and raise the kids together. But you have to select that mate carefully in accordance with what it is that you're looking for in order to better the species. This all happens on a natural level. You don't have to encourage it to happen. Over time, it will get to a point where either the species dies out or, right? We are just the greatest species on the face of the planet. No worries.
Mm-hmm. And the problem with removing what you consider to be bad genes is that that's nature experimenting with each of us. It's trying to find the most survivable thing in any given situation. And so different diseases, genetic disorders pop up because it's just a combination of genetics that didn't exactly work the way it was supposed to, or just wasn't viable for that particular environment. And it's going to keep combining them until it gets it right. So by removing what you see as bad genes is not necessarily a good thing, because that could be removing something from the gene pool that needs to be in our gene pool for it to survive later on down the line. We don't know. We can't possibly predict that. We don't understand genetics nearly well enough to be able to do something like eugenics. And to sit there and say that certain people can't breed because they're no, that's
it speaks to a level of arrogance.
Yeah, it really does.
And it imposes your own will onto that of otherwise supposedly autonomous beings, right? And it also sets a dangerous precedent for who can decide not just what can breed, but who can breed, right? Because we already decide who can breed with who in terms of animal health, right? We select dogs to breed with other dogs for specific purposes. or not in other cases. We elevate certain other species who are more purebred over species that aren't. And, you know, we are paying dearly for that in terms of the dogs that we have bred into existence and the particular things that we've bred them for, right? Like, for instance, your wiener dog. I don't know the actual specific name of a wiener dog, like what the scientific name is, but the wiener dog, the original purpose was to be able to hop into weasel holes and hunt them. And now legs are so tiny and its belly so close to the floor that it's not all that useful for really anything. I mean, yeah, it can still move and whatnot, but how many generations down the road is it going to take for that thing to exist as just like a rolling hot dog, basically a snake with floppy ears?
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Eve. We do not understand genetics nearly enough to actually be able to make those distinctions on any level. And of course,
I mean, just what you said, you know, we've already seen evidence of how that can go bad, especially with dog breeding, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You breed, say, like we had a dog who was part Greyhound and part Black Lab. The vet was worried that because if he had developed the Greyhound's tight rib cage and a Lab's big heart, that his heart literally would have been too big for his rib cage.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because we were fucking around with genetics and stuff like that. We don't understand, you know. I mean, not necessarily in this case. This was just happened to be he was a mutt, and the two breeds got together and, you know, did their thing. But to say that that's not necessary, that might not work in combination somewhere down the line if the right genetics were mixed in the right way to make a more efficient dog. Speaking of dogs, to make a more efficient dog doesn't mean that we should totally, you know, rule that out.
Ryan Waters says in chat, it seems to be the issue is the government body should not have the power to determine who should and shouldn't breed, but the individual. Correct. Yes, the individual should have that ability to determine if they want to breed with somebody versus not. Now, I recognize the implications of making that a thing ignores the fact that there are certain people that are unable to consent, right? Based off of their own mental faculties, to consent to have sex with other people who are with it in that essence, or people who are in a vegetative state, who are incapable of consenting in that regard, right?
Mm-hmm.
That on some level ignores those people without those mental faculties, but they're already covered by the fact that they can't consent. So we're not sterilizing them. You just can't have sex with them because they can't consent. It's a really weird thing to wrap your mind around, isn't it? Like if I was in a discussion with Balik on the subject and he was starting to bring philosophy to the matter, we would quickly devolve into this conversation about how at its core the argument that we're making is an absolutely abysmal, amoral discussion or whatever. It's just, we did this right before Thanksgiving, and so it's still super fresh in my mind. Ugh, and this is why I hate philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it strikes me as super arrogant to be able to make the assertion that a governing body can legitimately legislate what is and isn't acceptable to procreate in the species. Because who determines what is and isn't acceptable? What is and isn't viable? What should and shouldn't continue on? Off what grounds? What measurements are we using to determine this? What statistical analysis? Like, how?
That's the problem, is that there's really none of us are God. Not any governing body. None of us can see into the future to see how that will affect the population of the world at large, or even just the population of your country, or, you know, whatever group of people you're trying to experiment on with this stuff and say, hey, we're going to cut out this particular bad seed in there that we can't possibly understand what the relevance of that is.
Yeah, on its I really have to say, eugenics is not the way to go.
And here comes the other one.
Huh?
And then here comes the other one.
Oh, see, every single time you say, oh, and here he is, I think you're talking about Polly.
Sorry, no, he hasn't responded to Discord messages. He's not online yet. I don't know that he's going to make it.
What is up with that boy? Happy Dude says we weren't even talking about that. With regards to what? All right.
I think because BTK was trying to see what would trigger the YouTube censors by typing words in. It's not even so much individual words, it seems, as it is the way a word is used in a sentence. For example, if you're yelling at Ranting Monkey in chat, if you say the right phrase to him, YouTube will censor you, but you can just write the word monkey by itself and it works.
Weird.
It's just really weird.
That is really weird. All told, as many as 70,000 Americans were forcibly sterilized during the 20th century. The victims of state-mandated sterilization included people like Buck, who had been labeled mentally deficient, as well as those who were deaf, blind, and diseased. Minority, poor people, and promiscuous women were often targeted. Go away. Cohen notes that the instinct to demonize people who are different is still prevalent in the U.S. today, particularly in the debate over immigration. Oh, there it is. Take the intelligence of an Asian, financial inclination of a Jew, and the physique of a black, and the ego of an Aryan, and boom, perfect person. No. Says you, BTK.
Yeah, that's your opinion of it. Mm-hmm. Who's to say that a person in China or a person in Japan or a person in any other country, or even here in this own country, who's to say that your next door neighbor wouldn't have a completely different opinion of what a perfect human being is? Who is to decide that? And that's just not a question we need to be messing with, because once we start asking that question, once we start going down that road, we start opening up all sorts of doors that we don't want to know what's behind.
And the other thing too, right, is eugenics asserts that it's are genetic versus which ones are just purely environmental. Like this article stipulates that the blind, right, the deaf, there's no proof necessarily that all deaf people are going to pass that on genetically or have that as a genetic factor in their pre-coded into their genes. My grandmother is mostly blind, and it is not because it's a genetic thing, because none of her siblings were blind. It was just an environmental thing, and that wouldn't stop her. That shouldn't preclude her from reproducing, and it didn't. Obviously, I'm here, but that's one of those things. You naturally go deaf over your life as well, right? Depending on where it is that you work. So as a result, if you are one of those people that works in a high noise environment and you happen to lose your hearing early on in life due to that, do they make that distinction? Or did they make that distinction back in the day? Or would they make that distinction? Or are they just checking a box without any context?
Yeah, Joyce points out that midgets have regular sized kids. Yep. I mean, just because that's there doesn't mean it's it's ultimately eugenics, any kind of manipulation of populations like that makes me very uncomfortable, because it opens doors to a lot of things. It opens doors to make things like what the Nazis did okay, just because they didn't like a particular race and used imperfect measures of what a perfect human being was. Sorry. Of what a perfect human being was, they were able to justify, wiping out entire race of people, or trying to anyway. And that's the kind of places you go with that. That's the kind of thing that we should ever address again. I think we learned our lesson as a planet with that. At least I think we should have.
VTK says the door of who's perfect isn't answerable. The answer of who has genetics imperfect is a matter of scientific evidence. Sure, there are markers that would stipulate to more of a chance of this happening in offspring of these people, but there's no necessary guarantee of that, just that there is a higher chance of that. So it's a probability game, unless, of course, we're talking about extra chromosomes, hereditary diseases. Hereditary diseases don't, from what I remember, they don't get passed on 100%, even if you have the genetic markers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a chance that you wouldn't, even if you had them. And so does that make that person's life less valuable just because they have a chance?
I'm sorry, this little stream hose want all my attention right now because I'm streaming. Little Twitch thoughts.
One human can be perfect mentally, physically, or cock-sized. Something will be flawed. That is true. Something will always be flawed. Here's a thought experiment. Say, in the event that we can, let's assert, right? Genetic science is perfect. It can tell you anything that you would ever want to know about a person, not just in terms of their physical health or mental health, but it can also tell you everything that you want to know about their personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, say you can determine a person's personality based off of the genetics of their parents, or just based off their genetics, or what genetics would be passed down, right?
Excuse me.
Do you stop at the eugenics with personality differences as well? Do you, even if there's a chance that that person might have like a narcissistic personality? Because that's not perfect. Obviously, that's not ideal. A lot of people could do without the narcissism of certain members of their family or whatever. But does that mean that you have the right to stop that person from existing?
Exactly. Because what is considered acceptable and useful in society could easily, a couple of generations away, be not considered useful, and vice versa. There could be traits that would be very useful. For example, there are definitely parts of our own genetics, our own human bodies that we can see are left over from a bygone era. For example, having the wisdom teeth in the back. Mm-hmm. The reason we have those removed is because we don't really need them. But back in the day, they didn't have quite the same methods of cooking. When I say back in the day, I mean like in almost prehistoric times. They didn't have the same methods of preparing food that we do to make it easier for our mouths to process.
Mm-hmm.
We were tearing food from, meat from bone directly, and things like that. So even though we don't need those parts anymore, doesn't mean there won't come a time when we may not need them again. So I think it would be actually fairly unnecessary to work them out of the gene pool, like, producing our wisdom teeth type of thing. Especially since when you talk about these kind of things, these things that are deemed unfit, usually the percentage of them in the population is so minuscule. Like, unless you're talking about wiping out an entire race, in which case you're, that's a whole other argument. But
mm-hmm. But I've never been a big fan of the determinism argument, the determinism factor, the idea that who you are going to be is determined based off of, years and years and years of evolutionary genetic modification from your ancestors to accumulate into what is essentially just you. I've always been of the opinion that that doesn't allow for a lot of flexibility in who it is that you can become. So the idea that, you know, well, why even bother with this person if they have a genetic chance of being suboptimal?
You know, it's funny.
It doesn't sit right with me.
No, Ray's brought up something in chat where he said, here's another thought experiment. What if we could predict based on genetics that someone would grow up to be a pedo? That's an interesting thought, because it brings me back around to a conversation that he actually was a part of with me last night, where we were talking about, for example, Batman. By not killing the Joker, you could argue that Batman has cost hundreds, if not thousands of lives, because he hasn't taken the action needed to stop it. You know, if he could have just killed the Joker any number of times, he could have stopped all of his subsequent victims from coming about. In the same way, if you know that crossing is the same reason that Batman doesn't cross that line is because he knows once he does cross that line and starts killing people, because he thinks that, oh, well, it's just better if I do it this way. It's better for society. It's better for humanity. It's better for in all different ways. If he knows if he crosses that line, he'll quickly make himself judge and jury and try to become God. And he doesn't feel that he has the right to determine that, because there'll come a point when he'll make that decision and he'll be wrong, but he won't be able to see it because he's made that decision so many times it doesn't matter anymore. And in the same way, if we start doing that with genetics, if we start determining that, well, this person's going to be a pedo, you know, they just going to be no good to society, we might as well just go ahead and off them in the womb. This person's going to be have Down syndrome. You know, they will contribute nothing to society, and therefore we should just toss them out now. When we start making that that determination, it leads down a very dark path, in my opinion.
Batman is definitely an accessory. Sometimes you got to cross the line. If you aren't strong enough to step back across the line and resist the temptation, that's a you problem, not a line problem, the BTK says. Well, it's not so much necessarily resisting the temptation. It's, well, I justified it this one time. I can justify it again because of the same logic.
You know, I actually read a study recently about the reason that people with such great willpower to not do things that they know they shouldn't, like people who eat right or people who don't eat a lot of sweets, is not because they're just so strong in the moment when they're presented with a temptation, but they go out of their way to avoid it to begin with. And that scientifically, that we can track and see these people with high, what we would consider willpower, never put themselves in situations where they have to exert their willpower. They go out of their way to avoid it to begin with. And in the same way, I feel like Batman would go out of his way to avoid those situations where he's like, okay, I have to kill this person. If he can just went around killing people that he felt needed to be killed, you know, he knows that eventually the temptation would prove too great even for his insane willpower, which we all know Batman has insane amounts of willpower. But
bringing it back to the original question, right, that was asked, Daniel Pullman makes a good point, but they could be a pedo. But what if they never act on it? That brings up two excellent points. If the genetics predicts that they could be a pedo, there's a chance that they won't be, right? And so to take the less generous chance and just not allow that person to exist on the chance that they might be a pedo seems a little bit deterministic, and we all know my perspective on determinism. But at the same time, right, you also have to take that extra step and say, all right, say we do let him exist. There's also got to be the offending aspect if they are a pedo, right? Because a person, and I know this is an unpopular opinion, but a person can have the most debaucherous of sexual inclinations and never act on them in their entire life. And still be a decent person just because they have some specific bad inclinations that they sometimes imagine or whatever. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are a bad person, rather that they just have these awful thoughts every once in a while. I'm sure not everyone has pedo thoughts, but I'm sure people have thoughts about, reacting violently to people that they don't like, little fantasies about screaming their heads off at people that just piss them the hell off. But that's not who you are. That's not how you present yourself to the actual world. And as a result, that's not who you are. So you could have bad inclinations. You could have these bad thoughts. You could have things that you want to do, but you never act on. And as a result, still not be a bad person. And still not deserve to be eugenics out of the gene pool.
Fair enough.
It depends on the actions that you take as a person. And certainly your intent, but your actions do have a lot to do with it.
I think this comes down to a very fundamental argument of there are those who would see it as, yes, we should take these actions ahead of time. Yes, some innocent people who would have, had the self-control to not act on these bad things, or somebody who maybe has some hereditary disease will choose not to have his own children because he doesn't want to pass that on, but we can't take that chance. And the people who get hurt in the process, the small, number of casualties that outweigh the benefits. And then there are those of us who are like, everybody deserves a chance, Mm-hmm. And so I think that comes down to a very fundamental thing, belief system in people. And that's a lot harder to determine. I mean, I think we've whittled that down to about as far as we can go when it comes to that.
Right. So genes are nothing but writing in your genetic code that might determine whether or not you appear to be the certain thing or have the certain thing or what have you. They're not actually set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
They don't determine the way that your life is going to end up necessarily, or what advancements you make, or what it is that you contribute to the rest of society. And so no one, nowhere brings up an excellent point. Thought crimes, right? We have, for whatever reason, this inclination to prosecute people for hate speech, things that they say but don't do, or maybe don't believe but say. And then maybe we prosecute them also for things that they think but don't actually act upon as well. And this is like that next step of, will we prosecute people or eliminate them from the gene pool based off of things that is in their genetic code, but maybe not actually a thing.
Well, you mentioned prosecuting people for crimes they haven't committed yet. We actually had a movie about that,
Yes.
Minority Report. And it went very into depth about, what do you do when you have someone who's going to commit a crime? They locked up all these people who were predicted to prevent to commit crimes. And granted, when they locked up all these people, yes, no crimes happened. Mm-hmm. Like they literally cut crime to zero because no murders had happened, no nothing, because they locked all these people up before it happened.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was they took away the free will to be able to choose for that person in that moment to decide that they were not going to do it. And they proved several times that there was throughout the movie. I say they proved several times throughout the movie. They did actually end up proving in the movie that there is everyone always has a choice in that moment. You can choose to not do it. And should a person be sentenced to a lifetime for something what they might have done?
Mm-hmm.
It's
I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Yours now in chat brings up another excellent point. If you can justify punishment of a person without their having committed a crime, in the case of pedos, you can justify it against anyone, and you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can justify eugenics on people because you think that they have the potential to be a pedo, offending or not, right? Then you can certainly do it against people who you think might have a tendency to maybe smoke the marijuana. or have a mental break and maybe assault somebody, steal things because they're a klepto, or well, not a klepto, but like they have the need at some point in their life to steal something. I don't know. It gets all very meta, the discussion that we're having. It gets very meta very, very quickly. That was Minority Report, the Memes of Destruction.
Yeah, that was what we were talking about, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it is a terrifying violation of the Bill of Rights. Because you are owed due process in a court of law. And I vehemently believe that, right? We just went through a Me Too movement wherein people were prosecuted on the court of public opinion whether or not they were guilty of the action in accordance with a court of law. And I don't get behind that. This to me is kind of like an extension of that. We can't prove that they are going to be a pedo, that they will offend. We can only predict that there's a likelihood that they might, at some point in the future, do this. And you can probably, not in the case of pedophilia, but you can probably predict that someone in every instance is going to do something bad in the future, regardless of their genetics. And that let's bring this back to the eugenics issue, right? So actually, I have no idea how we got here from where it was that we started out with. We started out with the Ohio.
We started talking about, I don't know, we kind of transferred in. Somebody brought up eugenics, and then we just kind of went that direction with it. So.
A pothead gene. Hey, you don't know. We were. This thought experiment started under the assumption that there was a genetic factor that could predict criminal behavior, specifically pedophilia. In this case, I think Grace Jacobson said, because it came from my assumption that we could predict personalities based off of genetic factors. Sorry, you were going to say something?
Faith makes a very good point. Genetics should not be used as an excuse for society to not do its job raising folks.
Exactly. That's the other half of this argument. Is half of a person is what it is that they are forced out into the world with genetically. The other half is how they're raised, how they are brought up, the phenomena that surrounds them within their natural lifespan that turns them into the functioning adult that they are. And everything that you are is a combination of those two factors, nature and nurture. I choose to believe that it is both of those things in conjunction working as one that allows you to be the human being that you are. And not only do I choose to believe that, but I believe that it is 100% factual because we have evidence in psychology, right? And in a lot of studies that supports the fact that, for instance, fatherless homes are more likely to have certain aspects about them. For instance, girls are more likely to get pregnant in their teenage years. Suicide rates are higher. Criminality is higher too. And that's not because of genetics, it's because of the environment that they find themselves in when they're kids. Neuroplasticity, exactly. People are very resilient. You just have to give them the ability to be resilient, to be flexible. A child's mind is a sponge at birth. And it can learn an awful lot.
BTK says, I support eugenics in the sense of aborting genetically net negative individuals prior to birth, the anomalies, the ones that aren't going to reproduce anyway and will just cost society by existing.
But how do you determine that?
Exactly. That's the point I was going to go with. If we don't, then those that keep us from doing so can pay the net negative individuals and stay out of my purse. That's my view. The problem is that when we start determining that, they start saying, that's when you open the door for people to be able to say, well, you know, because African Americans don't make as much money as Caucasian Americans in the United States, we should just abort all African Americans. That's where you get that kind of talk and that kind of thing going on, you know, because people start taking that to a further extreme. They take it to the next step and the next step and the next step. You don't just stop at people who have, you know, Down syndrome or something like that, or trans or even gay kids, you know, that's also in my opinion, a very scary road to go down. Just because they're not going to reproduce doesn't mean that they have no value to society, and doesn't mean that they couldn't still offer something. And even if they don't offer something, there's no way that we can be sure we're doing the right thing in that regard. It's just, like I said, it's just too much of a tangled mess. Even our best scientists today still can't figure out genetics entirely. Like, we've mapped entire genomes and still can't figure it all out. So,
well, even if we were to assume that scientists could do that, you have to also figure out who's determining this.
Exactly. Who makes
and
that
how
decision?
do you make that distinction? How do you determine who gets axed and who doesn't? Based off what factors? Do we all have to agree? Because I'm certain a number of people wouldn't agree. And in that case, you do not have the consensus. Therefore, you are enacting your will upon the other people who don't want it enacted upon them. And then you are violating basic human rights at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Would we have eugenics out Stephen Hawking?
Fair point, because his debilitating disease, ruined his body, but he's considered one of the greatest thinkers of our time. We would have tossed him in the garbage for the rest of them at that rate. You can't be sure what a person is going to add to society.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Hawking produced a lot after his condition deteriorated a lot. Well, that's because he had a lot more time to do things like think in his own mind than literally anything else, which is sad. But saw a dude who worked on the Human Genome Project last year, and he stressed the importance of folks getting sequenced. Remind me what sequencing is, someone? From the means of destruction.
Sorry, sir.
Sequenced? What does that mean?
I'm not sure. Yeah, Britain would have axed Alan Turing, because Turing was gay, but which they still treated him like shit after he contributed so much to.
Oh. Followed by a final sequencing mapping of the human genome. Sequencing the human genome.
If we wipe out people likely to be alcoholics, we easily wipe out a fifth of the country, right? Especially using the standard that we use today, where it's like, oh, okay, your parents were alcoholics, so therefore you have a 50% chance of being an alcoholic yourself. Well,
a genome sequence is simply a very long string of letters in a mysterious language. When you read a sentence, the meaning is not just in the sequence of the letters, it is also in the words those letters make, grammar of the language. Similarly, the human genome is more than just its sequence. Imagine the genome as a book written without capitalizations or punctuations, without breaks between words, sentences, or paragraphs, and with strings of nonsense letters scattered between and even within sentences. A passage from such a book in English might look like this. And it gives me an example. Oh boy, that is a nightmare. It's difficult to pick out the meaning of the passage, and the genome is written in a far less familiar language, multiplying the difficulties involved in reading it. So sequencing the genome doesn't immediately lay open the genetic. So basically, it just maps out all of the different letters and stuff that is your genetics, that make up your genetics. It's just...
I would say it's important to know. Because if you have like a genetic predisposition to cancer, it's nice to know that so you can head it off ahead of time, That's something I've been needing to get done as well, Hormone therapy and stuff can actually increase your chances of having cancer. And since my mother has had cancer, I should probably get that checked out. But
you should probably get that checked out.
It takes time and money that I don't have right now.
So
I'm working on it.
I will be putting Eve's Streamlabs in the chat. Do you have a Streamlabs, Eve?
I have a Streamlabs now, yes.
Hey, put it in the chat, why don't you?
Oh boy.
And donate to Eve to help her get her genome sequenced.
To get my genome sequenced. That's what you're gonna go with.
Well, I can't get you a new potato because your potato is not bad, right?
My potato is a fucking 4-course meal with steak and ribs, and okay, it's not that good anymore, but you know, it's a couple of years old, but still, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah. Assassins of the Grey. Remember, Margaret Sanger's stated mission behind Planned Parenthood was to eliminate the lesser races. That is correct. She was a eugenicist, which is quite interesting when looking at the abortion rate amongst certain minorities within the nation today, offered by Planned Parenthood and sponsored. Sponsored by Planned Parenthood.
Only because she told me to put it in chat.
Sponsors, everybody. Cocktail Hour is brought to you by your lovely selves. Not that it takes a lot to put on this lovely show. It just takes me, a camera, and maybe someone else to entertain you a little bit. But if you feel so inclined as to throw your money at me, you can find those links in the description down below. Did I do that right? Did I do it all right?
Sounded all right to me.
Weebo likes wine. Polly likes bourbon. What does Chaos drink? Eve, what do you drink?
Midori sours.
All right.
Midori.
Guys, you heard it here, folks. Donate to Eve to get her sours. Patreon squad, rise up. Thank you, Rage Jacobson. Represent the Patreon squad. 1 Weebo, 2 cameras, 3 shots of drink. Actually, this is my third.
Much rather all of you guys go over to Twitch and follow me there.
Do it.
That would be much more helpful.
I'm just trying to help, all right?
And you're good. Throw your money at Weebo. She's a broke college student, so
I'm not.
I have a job.
I have a job. It's in the food service industry.
Oh, that's right. You do have a job now.
Sucking the life out of me, but it's fine. It's fine. I get tips and shit.
What is it? Midori sour. Midori sour is Midori and sour. It's Midori is a melon liqueur. So
yeah. Interesting. Who is more evil, Greta Weberg, or chaotically evil, or the evil otter? Oh, am I Greta?
Wow.
Dude, I don't appreciate this. Any barista stories? Yes, but I can't talk about them right now while I'm currently at the store. I can talk about when I used to be a camp counselor, though.
Oh, I should point out to anybody who would normally be at my my show right in about 3 minutes, I'm going to be a little late, so.
Oh.
You're fine.
Are you?
I'll be about 5 or 10 minutes late. It'll be fine. They ask, I'll point them in your direction and say, hey, go over there and check out Weebo Jones' awesome channel.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell one camp counselor story because I don't work there anymore, so I don't feel super salty, or not super salty, but super uncomfortable talking about them while I'm working there. So I used to be a camp counselor at tech camp, and the kids would come for like a week at a time for a specific class, and I would teach YouTube, video production. I'm not even kidding, they had a class on that. And then I also taught Java app and game development. So I was a twofer, but it was on different weeks. Yeah, Polly is not late, by the way.
Polly is not late if he doesn't show.
He's not late if he doesn't show. You're not going to be Polly late, are you, Eve?
What? No, not for my stream, because everything's set up. I just have to go over there and turn it on.
Excellent. So anyway, so I was working, this is my first week at camp, and I had 9 students in group 2. And Polly is marked absent. Yep. Polly doesn't show. Do we have to be here 15 minutes after the stream starts?
Hold on. I have to actually open my Streamlabs now because somebody actually sent a donation. Hang on.
Aww.
I had OBS still open, so it popped up and I heard the notification.
Nice.
But I didn't read the whole message because it popped up on the screen. It's okay. It was a long message. I was like, oh, I'll just read this short. It's not short. Okay, hang on.
let me know when you're ready. Because I can either finish my story now or finish it after you're done.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I had 9 students. They were group 2. So they were, I think, I'm going to say the least ideal age range because they're not quite high school age where they're on par with the maturity level that you need them to be at in order to handle all this tech. But they're not super young to the point where they're just super sweet and adorable and just, like, you can take them in a fight. It's fine. They are mid-range, middle school age, the worst age range, and I absolutely hated it. But let me tell you, there was this one kid, the bane of my existence, refused to do the work during class, refused to look at me during tutorial, refused to pay attention to me during tutorial. It got to the point where he would call his dad in the middle of me teaching the kids how to do this thing, and he'd be complaining to his father on the phone out loud in front of me while I'm teaching him. He's like, this is so useless. I don't like this. I'm bored. She's not doing anything. She's not teaching me anything while I am teaching. Right there in front of my face. And I can't do anything. I can't take the phone away from him. And I can't yell at him because we do positive reinforcement here at camp.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get through the week because
Sassy says, "Oh, him! I remember this little turd."
I'm trying to get through this week desperately because you remember hearing me bitching about him. I'm trying to get through this week because, next week I'll have a new influx of kids and it'll be completely different and I don't have to worry about it. But this little kid is just. Anyway, so the week continues on. We're getting to like Wednesday or whatever. And I can't remember if this is the first week or the second week. But I had him for 2 weeks, I think. No, I had him for, yes, the very first week that I ever had him. And then he came back a second week after that because he was signed up for the whole summer, but he was shuffled around from class to class. He didn't make it to week 3, by the way. Anyway, so the week that I had him, it was the very first week of camp. And so I was still figuring out how to do stuff. And this is my first class ever that I was ever teaching. And he just ruined it for me because Wednesday or whatever, I think it was Wednesday. If not, it was Thursday. We had to actually kick him out of camp and send him home because not only was he having actual tantrums sitting in his chair, bitching about how he didn't know what to do for his stuff, he was bitching about how he was signed up for the wrong class. He wanted to be in the YouTube streaming and gaming class, not the YouTube video production class. And so I just let him do the gaming class because it's fine, because it's literally the same class. It's just, he was signed up for this one, not this one. Price is a little bit different, but not really. And that's fine. But the other thing was we'd have outdoor recess time, and he would go outside and do some fun activities like sharks and minnows with the kids. And this kid, he was the shark, and he was not fast enough to turn everyone else into a shark. And so he's chasing all of the minnows, and he gets super frustrated because he's not fast enough. It gets to the point where he's like hitting himself in the head and blubbering with spit and snot out of his nose, and he goes off to sit in the corner. And I'm like, what's going on? Are you okay? All this jazz. Oh my God. He also got into it with a whole bunch of other kids on camera because they were teasing him a little bit, and he was reacting to it because they were playing a game and they were calling him slow. And like, how dare you call this kid slow while he's playing a game that requires him to be fast in order to actually succeed? It is. They were doing what kids do when they're outside. Anyway, so we come back in that afternoon, and the very first thing that they do is they go back to their games because they're about to stream and whatever, and he's playing with another kid sitting next to him who brought his mouse from home. So he had a specialty gaming mouse. And I'm standing right behind this kid, and I hear him talking to this other kid. And basically he tells the kid, I'm going to fucking kill you in front of me while I'm standing there. And it sounds aggressive. And this is the kid that I am pretty sure has anger management issues because he slams his fist against like the table, throws chairs, cries. hits his head against the wall. And so I'm like, I text my boss. I'm like, I need you to get down here because I need to take this kid out of the room before he assaults another kid. And I can't be alone with this kid. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue because we have this rule of 3 where you're supposed to be with like 2 other people or you're supposed to be with another person when you're with another kid. So you're never supposed to be alone with a kid. Anyway, so he gets in. He tells the kid, all right, you out. Come on. We go into the hallway. And we have a discussion about all this that was going on. And this kid is slamming his head against the wall because he's so frustrated. He's so sad and whatever. And we ended up sending him home that afternoon. This kid ruined like my first week. And I was scared that I was going to get fired because I'm like, we had to send a kid home. I don't know how to deal with this. He was just next level. I couldn't deal with this nonsense. No, I was not teaching special needs kids. What I remember about this kid was that whenever his dad would come to pick him up, he'd also have the kid's sister with him. And the sister was actually wheelchair bound. Like, very wheelchair bound. To a point where I don't actually think she was aware of anything that was going on at any given point in time. She was just along for the ride. Nonverbal, non-communicative in that way, just completely just sounds bad, but she was like a vegetable in a wheelchair. And I guess this kid, in order to get the attention that he craved from his parents, would act out. At least that's my conclusion about what happened. And it was to a point where they would just give in with whatever the kid wanted just to make it so much more easy on them in their lives. And that was the only attention that kid ever got. But it was like I had entered into the weirdest of family dramas. And I was only getting half of the story. And I was put in a position that was just abysmal. Because anytime I tried to talk to the kid's dad to get like some guidance on how to deal with this kid, the dad would tell me, "Yo, just let him do what he wants. Just let him game for a little bit. It's fine. Just let him go on his phone. It'll calm him down. Just let him go out into the hallway for a walk. He'll calm down a little bit." And I'm just like, no, that's not how you deal with this. He's having actual tantrums. He is 13 years of age, and he is having legitimate tantrums in my classroom, threatening the lives of my other students. This is unacceptable.
Joyce said fuck to say, but some kids need drugs.
So yeah, that's my lovely camp counselor story.
While you were telling your story, I got another one. So let me go ahead and read these off. Thank you for the $5, the BTK. I have to file a complaint. I'm supposed to be Weeb's only trap friend. We must enter the Thunderdome. We must solve this. My throne will not be usurped. My crown must not be stolen. What else to type? Hi, I'm BTK, Base Trap Kayla. Link your show. I did link my show. I linked my channel. I stream over on I stream on Twitch and YouTube, but I'm trying to transition over to Twitch more because YouTube is fucking everyone up the ass who doesn't do anything. It's just right in that sweet spot between family friendly and not family friendly. So
this is most definitely not family friendly. And I know that we're cutting into your show, Eve. I'm sorry. So I will cut the show.
Oh, I have one more.
Oh, you have one more?
And Jacob donated $3 to say just because I haven't donated in a while. Thank you, Jacob.
Aww.
Lion Major says Knoxville. No, I did Knoxville last year. We did Knoxville last year, and that didn't go well because fucking Tonkasaw didn't show up. So
So there's absolutely no possibility that there's going to be a repeat.
I'm not going back to Knoxville for another MMA fight.
You should come visit me.
I will come visit you.
All right. So
trap flap slap. I'm not even gonna. Oh my god.
You decide. I think I could take Eve. Put him up. All right. I'm cutting the show short. Actually, we're cutting it long because it's 9 minutes over when we're supposed to end it. But
oh my god, not again.
His face. Obviously, he didn't watch Pride and Prejudice, which is why he doesn't show up. It's fine. It's not a big deal. I'm just a little bit salty.
Duck Tater donated $2 to say drink whiskey. I don't know who Duck Tater is. I'm thinking that's either Duck Dog or
Lion Patriot.
Lion Patriot because of the Tater reference,
Yeah,
one or the other.
Tater reference. Anyway, I will see you guys next week on Sunday.
Thank you.
I will definitely be here. I don't know about Eve. Polly doesn't show. Maybe Eve will be here. We'll see.
Yeah, I'll come join you next week. Polly doesn't show up again.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
In the meantime, enjoy your week. I hope you guys all had fun. Thank you all to who donated, and thank you all to who donated to Eve, and thank you all to whoever commented and had a great time, and even those who didn't have a great time. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week and have a great one. And come back next week for more shenanigans. There you go.
Shenanigans.
You guys, want to see you next.
Hey, guys.
Please. I couldn't do the hashtag peace. I don't know what I'm doing. I've had 3 requests. Eve, help.